There were 4 faucets in every bathtub: hot city water, cold city water, hot ocean water, cold ocean water, and a 5th faucet in the sink, ice water, anytime you wanted it. 600 rooms, each one with its own bathroom, each bathroom with water pulled straight from the Atlantic, warmed, if you preferred, piped 17 stories up through tan brick and reinforced concrete to a hotel that a Chicago newspaper called, without exaggeration, the most beautiful building in America. The Traymore Hotel opened in Atlantic City on a June morning in 1915, and people who walked through its doors that first day said they'd never seen anything like it. The scale, the light, the way the marble floors caught the sun streaming through windows that faced the ocean on 3 sides. One guest, writing home to Philadelphia that evening, described it as walking into a palace that someone had accidentally built on a beach. It's gone now, blown up in 1972. The site where it stood, Illinois, Avenue and the boardwalk, one full city block of prime Atlantic City ocean front, has been a parking lot for 53 years. The story starts smaller than you'd expect. The name came from a rich Marylander named Uncle Al Harvey, who stayed in a 10-room boarding house on the beach in the 1880s and loved it so much he asked the owner to name it after his estate back home. Traymore, a village in Ireland where Harvey's family had lived before coming to America. Daniel White, the owner, took the name. And then he took the idea further. He rebuilt after a winter storm destroyed the original building in January 1884, made it stronger, added indoor plumbing, a luxury most Atlantic City hotels didn't have yet, built a lawn between the hotel and the boardwalk that would prove critical 5 years later when another storm hit in September 1889. The lawn absorbed the worst of it. The Traymore stood. Other hotels on the block didn't. By 1898, the Traymore was Atlantic City's largest hotel, 450 rooms, open year-round, modern appointments that drew wealthy families from Philadelphia and New York and Baltimore every summer. White ran it well, made money, built a reputation for quality that mattered in a town where new hotels opened and failed constantly. But White wanted something bigger. Something that would make people stop on the boardwalk and stare. In 1914, he hired William L. Price. Price was a Quaker architect from Philadelphia, 47 years old, with a reputation for brilliant design work and an obsession with reinforced concrete. He'd been using the material since the early 1900s, poured concrete with steel rebar running through it, creating structures that were stronger and more fire-resistant than anything built with wood or traditional masonry. Most architects still didn't trust it. The material was too new. Price had bet his entire practice on it anyway. He'd already designed the Marlborough Blenheim Hotel across the street from the Traymore, a Spanish Moorish fantasy with a dome that looked like it belonged in Andalusia, built entirely with reinforced concrete in 1906. People called it the most exotic building on the East Coast. Price had proven concrete could be beautiful. Now, White wanted him to prove it could be the best. They broke ground in the autumn of 1914. Winter construction, the worst possible time to pour concrete. Freezing temperatures made the curing process unpredictable. But White wanted the hotel ready for the 1915 summer season, and Price had worked through worse. They raced. Concrete poured in December, in January, in February. Workers building forms and pouring foundations while snow fell on the beach, while other builders told them they were insane. The building that rose from the sand over those 6 months was 16 stories tall, not the tallest in Atlantic City, but shaped in a way that made it look taller than it was. Price designed it in a cruciform plan, wings jutting out, from a central tower so that more rooms faced the ocean directly. The facade was tan brick, capped with twin yellow-tiled domes that caught the light at sunrise and sunset. Every room had a window, every room had a view, every room had a bathroom with those 5 faucets. The ocean water was Price's idea, a detail that seemed extravagant even by Atlantic City standards. And then there were the interiors. The carriage entrance on Illinois Avenue opened into a lobby finished in dark wood, oval staircases on either side, curving up to the second floor. You climbed those stairs and walked into the grand promenade, the main floor, the heart of the hotel, the room where guests checked in and met friends and sat in velvet chairs planning their days. The floor was white Vermont marble, veined and polished, laid in squares with inlays of gray Knoxville marble and dark green Vermont verde antique. The ceiling was hand-painted, murals of clouds and sky. The columns were travertine, imported from Italy, each one carved. The desk where you checked in was mahogany inlaid with mother-of-pearl. A newspaper correspondent at the opening wrote that the Grand Promenade was sumptuously decorated, but without falling into the excess that is so frequent in both American and foreign hotels. They were describing a room that was practically solid marble, 2,000 square feet of it. That was restraint in 1915. Off the Grand Promenade were the public rooms, dining rooms with windows facing the ocean, a ballroom with a ceiling 20 feet high and chandeliers imported from Austria, sun parlors that had been doubled in size during construction, creating vast spaces where guests could read while watching the boardwalk below. And downstairs, accessible by a separate staircase, was the Submarine Grill. N.C. Wyeth, the illustrator, already famous for his work on Treasure Island and The Last of the Mohicans, father of Andrew Wyeth, had been commissioned to paint murals. Across every wall, sea monsters rising from the deep, mermaids with long hair flowing in impossible currents, fish in colors that didn't exist in nature, an underwater fantasy world for people eating oysters and drinking champagne while the actual Atlantic Ocean crashed against the pilings 100 feet away. Price had designed the room with large windows at sea level. You could sit in the Submarine Grill and watch waves break against the glass while Wyeth's painted ocean swirled around you on the walls. At night, they lit the murals from below, making the creatures appear to move. Glass elevators faced outward, too. You stepped in at the lobby level and rode up, watching the boardwalk drop away beneath you, the beach spreading out, the horizon line of the ocean pulling into view as you rose. People who'd never been in an elevator before rode them just for the experience. It opened on time. June 2nd, 1915. First registered guest, the wife of Vice President Charles Dawes, there for the season with her family. The Traymore offered her the best suite in the house, top floor, corner, ocean views on 2 sides, and charged her accordingly. She paid without question, stayed for 6 weeks. Within a month, the Traymore was fully booked. Within a year, it had a waiting list. By 1924, a travel writer for a national magazine would describe it as the Taj Mahal of Atlantic City, an impossibility made real. It wasn't hyperbole. For nearly 40 years, the Traymore was the center of Atlantic City's summer. Families came back year after year. They requested the same rooms. They knew the bellhops by name. They knew which tables in the Ocean View dining room had the best light in the morning, which chairs in the sun parlor caught the afternoon breeze, which suites had bathtubs large enough to actually use those ocean water faucets. Conventions filled the banquet halls, insurance companies, medical associations, political groups. The Traymore could seat 1,500 for dinner, 4,000 in the largest convention space. Big bands played in the ballroom on weekends. Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington. During Prohibition, the hotel stayed full. Atlantic City's police had a reputation for looking the other way, and the Traymore served alcohol in teacups and called it tea service. Everyone understood the arrangement. The hotel had a reputation for elegance that made rule-breaking feel less like a crime and more like sophisticated urban living. It was a specific kind of luxury, not ostentatious, not showy, just deeply, thoroughly comfortable. In 1942, that comfort ended. The U.S. military took over the Traymore along with 46 other hotels in Atlantic City. The entire resort town became a military installation they called Camp Boardwalk. The Traymore became part of England General Hospital, named after Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Marcus England, who had worked with Walter Reed researching yellow fever in Cuba. The hotel served as the convalescent ward. Soldiers recovering from injuries spent months in rooms that still had the ocean water faucets, still had the marble floors, still had Wyeth's sea monsters watching from the walls of the submarine grill, which had been converted into a mess hall. 4 soldiers to a room. Metal beds where elegant furniture used to be. The ballroom became a physical therapy space. The sun parlors became waiting rooms. The last patients left in June 1946. The Traymore reopened to civilians that summer, spent the next year restoring rooms and trying to recapture what it had been before the war. And for another decade, it worked. The Traymore thrived through the late 1940s and most of the 1950s. Families who'd stayed there before the war came back. The hotel added amenities, television sets, new restaurants, modern kitchen equipment. In 1954, they built swimming pools, indoor and outdoor, designed by a New York architect, everything first class. But by the late 1950s, something had shifted. People who used to take the train to Atlantic City for 2 weeks every summer were flying to Florida instead. Cheap airfare, year-round sun, motels in Miami Beach with air conditioning and pools, and rates half what the Traymore charged. You could vacation in Florida for less money, stay in a newer building, and not worry about Atlantic City's declining neighborhoods. The Traymore tried to compete, but it wasn't enough. People wanted modern. They wanted new. The Traymore, for all its marble and its Wyeth murals, was 40 years old. It had been cutting edge in 1915. By 1960, it felt like a relic. The city around the hotel was changing too. Atlantic City's population had peaked at 66,000 in 1930. By 1960, it had dropped to 59,544. By 1970, it was under 48,000. The people leaving were the wealthy ones. The people staying were poorer, older. The tax base shrank. Services declined. Crime rose. Drug use became visible on the boardwalk. Storefronts sat empty. The grand hotels started to look shabby, paint peeling, maintenance deferred, trying to survive on shrinking revenue. The Traymore tried harder than most. In 1968, the owners spent $5 million on renovations. New elevators to replace the glass ones, central air conditioning throughout, a convention center addition, modern wiring, updated plumbing. But the hotel was losing money. Every year, more money. Maintenance costs kept climbing. The building needed constant repairs, leaks in the roof, cracks in the concrete, outdated electrical systems, structural wear from decades of salt air and winter storms. In October 1971, the owners made an announcement. The Traymore Hotel would close permanently at the end of the month. The cost of necessary repairs had become prohibitive. The hotel could no longer sustain operations. Preservationists reacted immediately. There was a campaign, petitions circulated, letters flooded the city council, arguments appeared in newspapers. The Traymore was an architectural landmark. William Price's concrete construction had influenced Art Deco buildings across the country. The submarine grill murals were among N.C. Wyeth's earliest large-scale works. This was one of the most important resort hotels ever built in America. On December 13, 1971, 2 months after the closure announcement, the Traymore was added to the National Register of Historic Places. It didn't matter. The decision to demolish had already been made. On April 27, 1972, at 7:30 in the morning, Jack Loiseau arrived at the Traymore with a team from Controlled Demolition, Inc. Loiseau was 46 years old, already famous for pioneering techniques for using explosives to bring down buildings in controlled sequences. He would later be called the father of modern building implosion. He'd been planning the Traymore demolition for months. The hotel was too big to bring down in one shot, too close to other buildings. So Loiseau designed a sequence, 3 separate implosions spread across several weeks. The first shot happened that morning. Two 14-story wings on the north side. Loiseau had placed charges on every floor, timed to detonate in a cascade from top to bottom. At 7:30 a.m., he triggered the sequence. A city official who watched described it as like a surgical operation. The wings came down in perfect synchronization. No injuries, no damage to nearby windows, just two massive concrete structures folding into rubble in less than 30 seconds. Hundreds of people gathered on the boardwalk to watch. Many of them were crying. The central portion of the hotel, the tower with the yellow domes, the section containing the Grand Promenade and the submarine grill, fell on May 26th. Same precision, same controlled collapse. The final sections came down in early June. The Traymore Hotel, 600 rooms, 6.5 million cubic feet, the Taj Mahal of Atlantic City, set a Guinness World Record for the largest controlled demolition in history. And then it was gone. What replaced it? Nothing. Caesars Atlantic City bought the land in the late 1970s and turned it into a parking lot. They intended to build a hotel there eventually. The plan never materialized. The parking lot was cheaper, easier, brought in steady revenue. In 2006, Pinnacle Entertainment bought the Traymore site and the adjacent Sands Casino. They announced plans for a $1.5 billion mega-resort. Then the economy collapsed in 2008. Construction stopped. Financing disappeared. In February 2010, Pinnacle canceled the project entirely. No buyers emerged. As of 2025, the site remains vacant. An open lot next to the Hard Rock Hotel, asphalt where the Grand Promenade used to be, parking spaces painted over the footprint of the submarine grill. There's no plaque, no marker, nothing to tell you what stood there. If you walk the boardwalk today at Illinois Avenue, you see an ordinary parking lot. It doesn't look like a loss. It looks like a convenience. But people who remember say you can still picture it if you try. The yellow domes catching the sunrise, the glass elevators rising, the ocean water faucets that seemed, at the time, like the most natural luxury in the world. Here's what was lost when the Traymore came down. The Wyeth murals in the submarine grill, the originals, painted in 1915, never photographed in color, never properly documented, gone. N.C. Wyeth died in 1945. His murals for the Traymore were among his earliest large-scale commissions. But the submarine grill paintings exist now only in a handful of black and white photographs and one preparatory sketch in the Brandywine River Museum. The marble floors of the Grand Promenade, 2,000 square feet of Vermont marble laid by craftsmen who took 6 weeks to install it, all of it reduced to fragments in less than a minute. The travertine columns, the hand-painted ceilings, the glass elevators, the bathtubs with 5 faucets, the ballroom where big bands played, all of it gone. The architectural drawings survive at the University of Pennsylvania, perspectives by Earl Horter, exterior renderings by Grant Miles Simon, floor plans showing every room. But the building itself, the thing William L. Price spent 17 years designing and refining, exists now only in faded postcards and a few seconds of footage in a Louis Malle film. Footage of the demolition, incidentally. The Traymore appears in the opening sequence of Atlantic City, Malle's 1980 film. The building collapses into a cloud of dust while Burt Lancaster's character watches from a window. That's how most people who've seen it remember it now. Not as a hotel, as a cloud. The Traymore was demolished 4 years before New Jersey legalized gambling in Atlantic City. 4 years. If the hotel had held on, if the owners had found a way to keep it open just a little longer, it would have been standing when Resorts International opened the first legal casino in May 1978. It would have been prime oceanfront property in a city suddenly flooded with development money, a historic hotel that could have been restored, renovated, converted into a casino resort. Instead, it was a parking lot when the casinos came. The Marlboro Blenheim across the street, Price's other masterpiece, was demolished in 1978. Preservationists fought to save that one, too. They won a court stay for the rotunda. The rest was imploded. Then the appeal was lost. The rotunda came down in early 1979. Both of William L. Price's Atlantic City hotels were gone within 7 years of each other. The buildings that replaced them? Bally's Atlantic City stands where the Marlboro Blenheim used to be, a standard casino tower, functional, forgettable. The Traymore site is still a parking lot. There's a detail that doesn't make it into most histories, but it's in the architectural archives at Penn. When Daniel White commissioned the 1914 rebuild, he asked Price to design a 25-story tower as part of the plan, an addition that would be built on the south side, connected by an enclosed bridge. If completed, it would have made the Traymore the tallest building on the boardwalk. Price drew it up. The plans exist, detailed elevations showing how the tower would integrate with the existing structure, how the yellow domes would be repeated at the top. But World War I started in August 1914. American banks got nervous. White couldn't secure financing. The tower was postponed. After the war, White tried again in the mid-1920s. But by then, the Traymore was already fully booked every season. There was no financial pressure to expand, no need for more rooms. Why take on debt? So the tower stayed on paper. It would be built eventually, White thought, when the time was right. That time never came. And in 1972, when the demolition charges went off, they brought down a building that was never quite finished. A hotel that could have been taller, grander, more dominant, but ran out of time. If you've ever been to Atlantic City, you've stood where the Traymore stood. You've walked past Illinois Avenue. Maybe you parked in the lot there. Maybe you looked out at the ocean from that spot, not knowing that 100 years ago people rode glass elevators up from this exact location while the beach spread out beneath them. You didn't know. There's no way you could have. Nothing marks the spot. But that's what's under the asphalt now. That's what the parking lot replaced. A building that took 17 years to perfect, 57 years to run its course, and less than 2 months to erase completely.